Hello, I have some fantastic news for you because a lot of you guys have kept the meme alive for a very long time. I, at one point, was training for the New York Half Marathon, which I did complete in a world record time of 2 hours and 41 minutes. That's not anywhere near a world record, and I definitely cramped up and ran a 17-minute final mile, but that's not important, and I didn't need to include that. Well, you've maintained the meme that I need to keep running, right? And that is impressive, and it has inspired me. That or I'm going to run the New York Marathon. I'm going to run it in November. So let's keep that meme going because once I move, I'm going to need to start training again. I'm moving in a couple of weeks, and then we're going to need to hit the ground running. Huh? That was pretty good, wasn't it? Well, speaking of cramps and just general muscle issues, we're talking about Naby Keita today. You might not remember him because he spent most of his time at Liverpool on the bench with injuries, which, again, I want to be clear with the injury stuff. I don't necessarily blame him for it. It's unlucky, but I'm still going to make jokes about it anyways. Naby Keita is a Ghanaian international, right? He is like the great, if Sadio Mane is the great hope for Senegal, right, then Naby Keita is this great hope for Guinea. He is their best player. He is the guy that was playing at the top level, right, for Liverpool and was capable of great things, even though he was not able to showcase them that often because of his injury history. If you hadn't thought about him since then, that's not your fault, right? Why would you be waking up in the middle of the night thinking about Naby Keita? That's my job. Well, there is a headline that broke fairly recently that might have just absolutely blown your mind. So Naby Keita left on a free from Liverpool because, big wage, tons of injuries, nobody wanted to buy the guy, and he left on a free and went to Werder Bremen. Now, Werder Bremen is a German team that is in the Bundesliga. They're not one of the best teams, but they're also not relegation threatened at the moment. Yeah, and my brain was right. Werder Bremen chilling out in 12th. Comfortably 5 points ahead of the relegation zone with 5 matches to play. Comfortable is probably a bit of a strong word there, but this is a very serious step down for Naby Keita from playing at Liverpool, one of the biggest clubs in the world, and competing for Premier League titles and Champions League titles. That in itself is a massive hit to his ego, right? And then the way this season has gone, also a massive hit to Naby Keita's ego. We're building up to a point of real catastrophe here. See, Naby Keita started the season with, stunningly, an injury, right? He missed the first 4 matches, then he played 1 minute, 21 minutes, and 59 minutes in consecutive matches before missing the next 4 matches with, you guessed it, an injury. At which point he got influenza, spent 3 matches unused as a substitute, then was ill, so this is a separate illness, then was called up to the Ghanaian national team for AFCON, then he was on the bench and unused, then he got a stomach flu, and then was listed injured for fitness reasons, and then he was on the bench 2 more times. So not only has he suffered 2 different muscle injuries and been called up to his national team for AFCON, Guinea, obviously, he has suffered 3 different illnesses. This guy is patient 0. You need a mask just to have Naby Keita in the locker room, apparently. But he has bounced back from all of this to play a very strong 4 minutes against Union Berlin and then 22 minutes against Wolfsburg. That meant that from the 7th of October to the 16th of March, Naby Keita did not play at all. Now, granted, the entirety of January was wiped out because of AFCON. That is still incredible, considering Naby Keita has 84 Premier League appearances, and he's only 28 years old, right? This is somebody that he came, if you didn't know his lore, he came from the Bundesliga to Liverpool in the first place. So this is also not a country or a league that he's unfamiliar with playing in. This is just a massive catastrophic fall off. And that point that we were building to is after he was left on the bench and not played against Eintracht Frankfurt. Then that brings us to the 14th of April against Bayer Leverkusen. This was the day, of course, that Bayer Leverkusen won the league. Just in case you weren't tuned in to social media a couple of days ago, 5-0 win over Werder Bremen, and Bayer Leverkusen ended the 11 years of Bayern Munich dominance that was going on. But the drama for Werder Bremen, and maybe helping contribute to Bayer Leverkusen's eventual victory, was that Naby Keita, after finding out that he was not going to be starting the match, he just decided not to go to the game. So Naby Keita was supposed to be on the bench for the match, but when he was informed, allegedly, that he was not going to start the match, he just decided to go home. He was fed up. He'd had enough. The falling off was too much. Now, obviously, promptly, Werder Bremen decided to suspend Naby Keita for the rest of the season, which granted is literally 5 more games, but that means that his career at Werder Bremen is also likely done. They've also said that they were going to put out a substantial fine. Now, Naby Keita disputes that's what happened, saying that Clemens Fritz, this guy, saying that he was trying to tarnish his reputation, right? But I'm going to be entirely honest with the way legally these things work. If you have suspended somebody for the rest of the year and given them a substantial fine, you usually have very, very sturdy ground to stand on. Like very, very sturdy ground, like an island in an ocean type ground to stand on. Well, Naby Keita is out at sea here because the early reports are that Naby Keita was just frustrated and that he went home. And understandably, Clemens Fritz said, as a club, we won't tolerate Naby's behavior. He let his team down in a time of difficulty surrounding our recent run of form and squad availability and put his own interests above those of the team. All of that makes perfect and complete sense. You can't have players just deciding they don't want to show up. But I want to focus on Naby Keita because this is a tough moment in the career of every player. There was a point 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe at 2018, I think, where Naby Keita was the most expensive signing in the history of Liverpool. Over 50 million pounds. They signed him from RB Leipzig, and he was supposed to come in and be a hotshot part of a Liverpool team that did, in spite of his injuries, end up actually being incredibly fantastic. And he does, as a result of that, have winners' medals from his time at Liverpool, right? He was able to contribute enough in order to acquire those winners' medals. But you can imagine the type of high-riding, highfalutin, ego-boosting time that you're having when you are the most expensive signing in Liverpool history. You are a part of a squad for 5 years that is competing at the very top level of the game. And then when I'm sure he went to Werder Bremen, he expected to be an absolute star, a feature part of the game. But there's just a certain point where you just can't do it anymore. And any professional athlete runs into this point, and they all handle it in different ways. And Naby Keita is clearly just not handling that very well at all. It's a very human response because you're often the last person, I feel like, to know that you just aren't good enough anymore. But the fact that somebody that was as good as Naby Keita once was just 5 years ago is only getting really sparse playing time in the team at Werder Bremen is a sign that he has fallen so far off what he used to be that it's almost unrecognizable. And clearly it's unrecognizable to himself because the fact that he is not starting in this Bayer Leverkusen match based off of the amount that he's been used this season, even when available. I mean, this guy's been left on the bench a lot of times. He's the most minutes he's played in a match this season's 59, right? Like, this is not somebody that has had any long runs in the team, that has had any serious runs in the starting lineup. He has one start all season, right? If you look at all of that in totality, it's not a surprise at all that he's not, that they wanted to have him start on the bench. I mean, shoot, he spent most of his time appearing on the bench when he's actually been around the Werder Bremen team. But this was just the straw that broke the camel's back for Naby Keita. And it's always been interesting to me, just as a deep personal interest I've always found fascinating, tracking athletes' careers as they wind down. You have the Ronaldo version where they build themselves their own kingdom and just keep scoring goals. You've got the Messi version where they get all their friends together and, drop down a league level and basically keep trying to stomp. But you also have the Andre Schürrle version where at 30 years old, you just retire because you don't want to do the grind anymore and you start hiking mountains shirtless, right? There are a ton of options. And with all the injuries Naby Keita's had, it's clearly sapped them of more than playing time. He's just not as good as he used to be. That's not to say that if he doesn't come up with a new cryogenic ice freezing muscle chamber or whatever those things are and a couple of new stretches that he can't all of a sudden reappear and reemerge in his early 30s as a talented box-to-box midfielder as he was always meant to be. But right now, it's just not there. And I feel like that realization has finally hit Naby Keita, which presents him with a fork in the road. He's either going to continue to lean into the I'm going to be a problem if you don't play me aspect because I'm a big deal, or he's going to have to accept the fact that he's kind of a bench player on a lower mid-table Bundesliga team. And unless there's another team that really sees fit to give him a shot, that combined with a poor attitude can really end your career quickly. So I don't know what's going to happen. I always like Naby Keita as a player, but this is just kind of an insane situation that I think Werder Bremen handled as well as you possibly could handle. But I would imagine this has been bubbling under the surface for some time, and this was just the inevitable explosion at the end. So if anybody sees Naby Keita just wandering around, tell him to get back to training. He's got a job to do.